Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining. Um, Today, we're going to be having Checkpoint presenting on SASE. So we're going to be having Cordelia, who's from Checkpoint, and she's the one who's going to be presenting. So Riaz is going to tell us a bit about Checkpoint, and yeah, and then we'll have Cordelia take it away. Thank you. I think we're going to just wait a couple of more minutes just for more people to join, and then we'll start maybe in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay. So just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please just drop them in the comments below, and then we will attend to them after the presentation. Riaz, you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faro. A warm welcome to all. My name is Riaz Hamid, and I'm the Territory Account Manager for 5 SADC countries: Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, Botswana, and Malawi. We've been invited to have a very, very short discourse on our SASE solutions. As many of you do know, that post 2019, I think the landscape in which technology and how people connect to businesses has really, really changed. And we as Checkpoint, who have been in the industry for roughly about 32 years, just maybe a year older than I am, we've really looked at how we talk to our customers and how we speak to the immediate requirements of connectivity. And our SASE solution, which we've taken upon as being one of the emerging technologies within our business, is part of a solution to enable our customers to grow, and also at the same time create very, very strong awareness around zero trust, which is a pivotal importance right now. I'm normally supported by Cordelia Elway. She's my technical sales engineer. She looks after me from a technical perspective. We look at these countries, and I think the reason why we're here is to actually show you how we can actually extend our security over through to traditional VPNs, which is typically now being phased out and being replaced by SASE. So without much ado, I'd like to pass over through to Cordelia, and Cordelia will take you through. Yes, we do have a question and answer session, and by sure we'll try to answer all of your questions tidily. Thank you very much. Over through to you, Cordelia.
Thank you so much, Riaz. Good morning, everyone. As introduced, my name is Cordelia Alway. I'm part of the sales engineering team at Checkpoint. So here to help you understand the solutions, understand where you are in your cybersecurity journey, and walk the journey with you alongside the Procom team to make sure that you get the best solutions that work within your environment. So I will start sharing my screen with you. I will get a heads up as soon as you can see that. Give me a second. Okay, that should be coming through now. Alrighty. So just if you do have any questions through the course of the session at any point in time, please feel free to utilize the chat feature as well. From there, if you do have any specific questions, we can address them uh, after the session when we have a little bit of a Q&A. Otherwise, you can save them for the very end. But anything that is pressing in the moment, please feel free to just use the chat feature over there. We'll monitor that one closely. Alrighty. So without further ado, let's have a look at what we're going to look into today, right? So we're going to have a look into what SASE is, understanding the evolution of the network, how exactly we got to this point where we are talking about SASE, what SASE is, and also how it's been packaged and what the solution offering actually looks like. So it's divided into two sections, private access and internet access. I don't want to get ahead of myself with any of the information or the details around how the solution is packaged. But then once again, we do have a Q&A session right at the end. Otherwise, if you have any questions, please utilize the chat feature so that we can address those accordingly. Alrighty, so let's take a little bit of a step back, right? And let's go back into the fundamentals and the architecture of network security and how a typical enterprise network is structured. So if we have a look over here, we've got an office typically where all the employees are working from. On the other end, you've got your data center with all your resources. How those users are actually connecting to the data center typically went through a VPN, right? Going through a gateway, a physical appliance in this instance, or virtual maybe, depending on your preference. Then we've seen there was a little bit of a change, and now you needed to gain access to resources through the web agent, and you've now also got a rise in internet-based threats. So from that layer, we started seeing branch level internet security coming into place. So digital transformation also came into all of it, and we saw the adoption of cloud security and cloud technology in this instance. So you've now started looking at software as a service. So a common example in this instance could be your productivity applications. You moved from more of an on-prem approach, taking it all into the cloud. Then you've got your public cloud, so your hyperscale providers in this instance, your AWS, Azure's, GCP, any of those providers that offer private cloud offerings in this instance. And the adoption of remote work and hybrid work further also impacted all of these changes that we see. And from there, those remote users also require access to all of those resources the same way and the same type of experience that they had when they were in the office. Now, with that came its own problems, which we've seen, such as a bad user experience. You find if you're within the IT department space, for example, you'd find a whole lot of tickets being raised and users are complaining, my PC is slow, I can't access my resources, and you have scalability issues. You find the organization went from a 2,000 user to, let's say, a 2,500 user. And from there, you need the solution that can actually scale with you. And these are just some of the teething pains, shall we put it, that came with the shift to cloud and remote work and the impact that that had on the network as well. We've also seen a lack of agility with that. So IT and the space of cybersecurity is all about transformation, and solutions need to go with that and actually move at the speed, if not faster, at that what the organization actually requires. So a lot of these are key things that we've heard our customers raise as key points that they actually look at. So now this actually gave rise to Cloud SASE. So I want to take a bit of a step back and expand on what SASE actually is. So a lot of the time people hear SASE and they start wondering, what exactly is it? Who thought up this word? Is it a buzzword? What is the whole idea behind SASE? So SASE is a term that was coined by Gartner. It stands for Secure Access Service Edge. And the idea behind SASE truly is behind the security of any resource that is sitting within any of those data centers, whether it's a private data center, public data center hosted within the cloud space, any of those resources that need to be accessed from the office or from home by a remote user. The idea is to make sure that you have a secure connection to those resources. Now, SASE takes it a little bit further, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit as well. So this is where SASE was born, and specifically Cloud SASE. So the idea behind Cloud SASE was truly to make sure that the connectivity between all of these various points that you see on this end over here are facilitated through one of these offerings that make up SASE. So internet access, SaaS security, and private access. Now we'll get into a little bit of each of those in a little while, but this is basically the fundamentals of what Cloud SASE actually is. With this move, we saw the previous one where we were seeing VPNs and gateways that were located either on-prem or within the cloud, and a bit of the problems that came with that. So now we've seen Cloud SASE, so now we take it a step further, and we understand some of the challenges that come with cloud-based SASE solutions as well. So firstly, the moment you start routing traffic through the cloud, the first question that comes up, my internet is slow because there's an extra layer to securing the traffic that flows through. The other point, it violates my privacy. This agent or whatever solution the Cloud SASE may be utilizing is overprivileged and overpermissive in this instance when it comes to the access that it has to the machine itself. And with that also comes very high cloud costs. If you're routing large amounts of traffic, you can imagine the egress costs that ingress and egress costs that would actually come with routing that traffic through the cloud. So the one thing that we actually saw with the violation of privacy in this instance, it pertains particularly to the exposure of sensitive information, all due to SSL traffic being encrypted and flowing through an unknown location. You have no idea where it's going, which also then poses a problem for compliance. You find auditors want to understand where your traffic is going and which data centers it's all being routed through. If you don't have that information, you could find yourself in a position of being non-compliant. And these are some of the issues we see with a cloud-only based SASE solution. So why is it important to actually solve these problems? We had a little bit of a survey. We put out a bit of a poll, and we wanted to know, what are your top considerations when selecting a SASE solution? So the responses were in. Key things we saw: cost, for sure. We'll always come down to numbers when we're talking about these things. The speed of the deployment. We're looking at, is the solution actually friendly from an operational perspective? We look at the features that the offering actually has. Does it meet all the requirements that the customer has and that is actually required in this instance? And top of it all is actually the end user experience. If you have, let's say, 100 tickets, all because your end users are informing you that their internet is slow, their machines are giving them problems, it always goes back to what is the most recent technology that you added to this device. And you find it may be a SASE solution, and that's exactly what we want to make sure does not happen within our SASE space. So this is where our hybrid SASE comes into play. At its core is also a cloud-based SASE. However, we've taken it a bit of a step further and we've readjusted and reimagined how our architecture actually looks. So with that actually comes an on-device agent, which performs the full range of security enforcement and can actually enable direct connectivity to whichever destination website you may have without needing to route that traffic through to the cloud. So by having this, you take it a step further and you remove the reliance on the cloud only because the agent itself on the local machine has the ability to take care of carrying a lot of the load and a lot of the processes that actually come with securing these environments. So all of these stats that we actually see here as well. So for example, the faster internet security, we're going to get into that in a little while. But a lot of these structures to how SASE actually works and hybrid SASE being a preferred model over cloud-based SASE is also acknowledged in third-party analyst reports such as Gartner. So we go back to what the vision is. Gartner coined this term, but where were they actually going with it and what is the vision of it? So Neil MacDonald, who's a VP analyst, a distinguished analyst at Gartner, actually pointed out that when the term Secure Access Service Edge was coined, the vision for the edge was any location from which the delivery of the security services would best match the use case at hand. So taking into account the perimeter of cybersecurity and of the environment is constantly changing and constantly moving and evolving. So that edge and that perimeter that you want to secure also needs to move with the security solutions as well. So let's get into some of the key things that we're seeing as well. So we're speaking about the agent and the local device actually having the ability to handle some of those traffic and some of the processes that actually come with SASE. You might be wondering, okay, the speed thing, how does that work? So one thing that I would like to add that contributes to us actually having minimal latency from a checkpoint solution perspective is our private backbone that we have to our SASE solution. So at the moment, we have 81 global places of presence. So we call them POPs, and they're located in 48 different locations, countries, regions in this instance. Within the Africa space, we actually have one located in Johannesburg, South Africa. Within the Europe space, you'll find them across various different regions, as well as within the Americas and Asia as well. The idea behind that is you do not need to have a single point of failure. If you have a network, in this instance, you could have one set up within the Johannesburg space, and from there, you could actually have a second backup that gives you high availability that can then actually route the traffic through to a second location. So just as an example, let's have the primary network starting in Johannesburg and have the secondary network actually fail over to Paris in France. So you can then actually align that strategy with compliance. So different countries, different regions, you'll find you have a stipulated list of where your data may reside and where you may move the data across the different territories. So by having it actually sitting within compliance regions, it is actually easier to configure high availability as well. But we'll get into the configurations in a little bit. One thing that I think is always a standout is looking at what the brain is behind all of this. So you often think, okay, you've got a SASE solution. Where's the intelligence coming from? How exactly is this thing actually being powered up? So we have what we call Threat Cloud AI. It's the brain behind all of our technology. So whether you're looking at an on-prem firewall, you've got cloud security, all the way through to our workspace security offerings. So our Threat Cloud AI, you can think about it like a human brain. let's take it, dissect it. It's got two sides. The one side, which you can refer to as more of the cognitive side in this instance, has one of the world's largest data lakes. So this data lake is full of known and unknown threats, right? So we've scraped the surface of the world to see what type of information and intel do we have at hand. We correlate all of it, and that makes up the one side of Threat Cloud AI. Now, the other side, keeping in mind that no two environments are actually the same. So we've taken it a step further and we've incorporated artificial intelligence and machine learning into the threat cloud itself. So with the other side of it, with the AI component and the machine learning, you'll typically find that it can form a baseline of your environment. That way it can understand what exactly is a risk to your environment. So for example, let's say the baseline comes back showing that from the 1st to the 10th of every month, there's peaks within your traffic. Whereas from the 15th to the 20th, maybe it's a little bit quieter and it picks up again within the last bit of the month. If you start seeing a change in that traffic, yes, it could be due to system changes, or you could find that there's a DDoS attack or DOS attack in this instance. So a distribution of services where they're just flooding your services with requests to bring it down essentially. So it looks for those types of things and can then actually come back with the feedback and response to tell you, you know what, there's an anomaly here. Something is amiss and we should actually investigate that. So all of this forms part of telemetry data that's actually shared across all of our solutions on a global scale. So whether you have a firewall or you have email security, whichever component, as long as you have the checkpoint offering, you have the Threat Cloud AI sitting behind it. If there's an attack that took place in Germany, for example, what will happen? That same intel that we have gathered from that attack, we share it across all of our devices, across all of our solutions, so that you are protected from that as well. So all of this actually sits behind that, offering a unified threat prevention solution. Now we're going to get into the solutions themselves. So we're going to start off with private access, and then we'll get into the internet access component. So the true idea behind private access is to give users the freedom to securely connect to any resources, all based on zero trust. Now, whenever you hear zero trust, often people start thinking that it's a single solution and you're going to position one component or configure a single policy that will give you premium zero trust architecture, and that is not the case. Zero trust is actually a framework in this instance that is structured around never trust, always verify. Just because you have access to the environment or your credentials state or appear to state that you are part of the organization, that does not necessarily mean that we automatically trust and will give you access to what is being requested until said person has been verified. So that's the idea behind zero trust. And that's at the foundation of the SASE solution. You'll never trust, always verify any access that is required to any resources in this instance. So the idea behind it is to look at securing all resources, taking it all the way from your protocols, from your application layer, taking it through to the network layer, so layer 3 to 7 within the model, the OSI model, and offering that same level of security regardless of the type of device that you have. So if you have a Mac, you could have a Windows device, Chromebook, maybe even a mobile-based device, so a tablet or a mobile phone, whether iOS or Android, you have the ability to install the SASE agent within that platform and facilitate that connection. Now, the other component of SASE, which is quite a key thing, also tying back to zero trust once again. You find that you have third-party contractors that often require access to your environment, and they should only have access to the parts that they require access to and not to the entire environment. So this is where we start seeing the requirement for having agentless access. So you have unmanaged devices or potentially bring your own device policy in place. What you can actually do is you'll be provided with a specific URL in this instance. Behind that URL, you can then have access to the relevant network that you set up and configure with the right permissions to allow the person access to only the specific resources that they require access to. Often with the SASE solution, what you'd find is it gives you access, or rather visibility, to everything, but you can't click on it, but you can see it's there. So it's almost like a hidden folder. It's grayed out, but you know it's there. So if you really wanted to be malicious about it, you could find a way to get through it. The idea behind this is you should only see what you should have access to. So we configure the network in such a way that if you have a resource, let's say it's a specific website, for example. Maybe you have an in-house system that you've developed and it should only be accessed through a secure connection. What we'll do is you'll get a specific URL, configure the relevant application, and from there, it will authorize through one of the following protocols. It could go through RDP, could go through SSH if there are VNC configurations as well. Any of those protocols can be utilized to access those resources. Now, the key thing here is if you do not have the agent installed, it does not mean you can't have SASE. So the moment you have the use case for third-party contractors and BYOD, there is another configuration layer that can be done to have agentless access. Now, the idea behind it, remember we spoke about never trust, always verify. We are identity centric, so you have various different identity providers. You could go through SAML, so depending on the protocol configurations, you could have LDAP, and the idea is to still have a single sign-on approach where you can utilize and integrate your Active Directory, your Entra ID, whether it's on-prem or sitting within the cloud. We can still utilize and leverage that existing configuration that you've done, and from there actually push out the relevant policies to those users. So the other step that comes with that is a device posture check. You often find that, let's say you have that unmanaged device, and you have a requirement where if the device is at a certain version of the operating system, it should not have access to the resources. It's non-compliant. Let's take a Windows machine, for example. Let's say you've configured your environment in such a way that only users that have Windows 10 and above, whichever version of Windows 10 or 11 that may be. From there, if you see a device with Windows 7 or Windows XP, whichever version they may come with, block it, do not have access to the resources. That is a vulnerability on its own with outdated systems in this instance. So you're able to facilitate device posture checks on a granular level. So not just on an operating system level, we take it a step further once again, and we can even drill it down to the browser. If you have deemed the organization-wide browser is Google Chrome, for example, we can set it in such a way that if a user tries to paste that link into Edge or Internet Explorer or Firefox, any of the other providers within the browser space, you won't have access and you'll get a notification prompting the user, which you can customize as well, just to say, listen, you need to go via Google Chrome. We have not authorized this browser for access to our resources. With that, If you have the agent installed, you can actually do inventory management. So from there, you can actually see how many devices do you have that are actually connecting through to resources on the network. What are their operating systems? When last did they actually connect through to the SASE agent? And are they actually going to be compliant? So those are the baselines that you can use to manage the overall posture of your environment. If you need to give feedback to a management team and they want to know how many MacBooks or how many Linux servers or machines do we actually have in the environment? From the SASE agent, as long as it's been installed, you can pull that telemetry data and actually utilize that to understand which devices may actually no longer be in use. Maybe an employee left the organization and they still have the device in this instance. So you can track all of that and see what's going on. So the capabilities, almost in summary in this instance, all come together to form this pillar over here. So once again, we're talking about zero trust at its core, all plugging in with full mesh connectivity. The idea with full mesh connectivity as well is if you have any network security already in place, so a firewall, whether it be a checkpoint firewall or a third-party firewall in this instance, you find that there are actually integrations available and you can leverage those connectivity configurations that you already have in place. The other thing that also plugs in with the architecture, and I'll show you what the complete full mesh connectivity architecture looks like in its entirety, is SD-WAN. So SD-WAN in this instance is centered around securing branch offices and optimizing connectivity. So the SD-WAN component also integrates very well into the SASE component because you find you're moving from a traditional MPLS line more into the SD-WAN space, but I'll get into that as well. So in terms of the configurations that you can actually do within the SASE space, we also have firewall as a service. Now, if you've dabbled within the checkpoint firewall configuration space, you may be familiar with configuring your policies. So accept, drop, potentially even warn in this instance when it comes to how you log and configure the traffic. You can have that same approach within the SASE space. So within private access, you can configure and stipulate if the traffic matches the following rules, drop it. It shouldn't go through, it shouldn't be allowed through. If you want it to be, let's say, a warning in this instance, so the warn is more on the internet access side of things, but you can configure your policies in such a way that they can accept or they can drop the traffic. Then the other thing is, once we've actually done the configuration, for the workspace that you've configured within the SASE client, you'll get a dedicated static IP address. Now, the idea behind the dedicated static IP address is truly having security at its core. By having that dedicated IP address to that environment, it means no one else shares that and no one else has access to it besides your workspace itself. The other part of it also comes in with enterprise browser and securing any connections that may be facilitated through the browser in this instance. Okay, we're going to go into internet access, time permitting as well. If we do have a little bit of extra time at the end of it, I'm happy to show you the platform and what that actually looks like. Alternatively, we can always have a follow-up session with the Procom team. Okay, so let's look into internet access. Now, the moment you hear internet, anyone within the IT team sometimes gets their skin crawling, and you can only imagine if you find your employees, they wander off into the internet, the big bad world of the internet, and they download various different files, they access various websites that are not compliant with your IT policies, or they're actually just malware-ridden websites in this instance. So the idea of internet access is to secure that connection for any resources that are accessible via the internet. So you can configure things such as web filtering. So not just looking at categories, there is a foundation of categories. So for example, let's say from a productivity perspective, not all employees should have access to YouTube. Simple example. Streaming services. If you try to connect to YouTube during the working hours of 8 to 5, you shouldn't have access unless you are maybe the marketing team or an authorized group of users that has the relevant permissions. So you can configure those policies in such a way that if you are not one of those authorized users, you will not have access to that website. So this is not only from a productivity perspective, so social media, streaming services, any of those categories, but also to inappropriate websites. So you can always find a list in this instance and different categories that show you, okay, this is gambling, for example. Maybe you have a restriction in place that gambling websites are blocked. So from there, you can actually make sure that users are unable to always, well, actually never access gambling websites in this instance. You can also then configure what the URL path rules are and built-in DNS filtering. Now, the built-in DNS filtering plugs into the next point that we'll discuss, which is malware protection and traffic inspection. So looking at the traffic and the resources that are being accessed via the web, you often find that you need to take it a step further and understand what's going on within the URL, what's going on within the configurations from a cybersecurity perspective. So is this a malicious website? Is it taking me to a fictitious Candy Crush website, for example? So within that, you'll actually have the native ability to do things like anti-bot filtering in this instance. It can have a look to see, okay, this is an anti-bot, well, this is a bot website in this instance. With the anti-bot technology, it can block it. This is a malware-riddled website. There's a malware configuration there that can actually block that as well. It will scan all the traffic and make sure that any resources or any connections that are flowing through the internet are actually secure and safe. Which also brings us to the next point. We often find that users connect to any Wi-Fi source. Your Wi-Fi at the office is probably secure. You have the right measures in place. Maybe even the connection at home, if your users are working from home, could also be secure. But users are also connecting at restaurants, hotels, coffee shops, any other place, visiting a friend or wherever they may be. The idea behind that is that you can then make sure that users are not connecting to unsafe Wi-Fi connectivity options, all because of, let's say, how it's configured. You can see that it's not a trusted network, and you do not want that device to have access through a network that is actually malicious. So from an internet access side of things, powered together with private access, you can actually make sure that that configuration is actually monitored. Now, let's look at how it all comes together once again. So internet access, when you rack it and stack it and put it all together, you have URL filtering. So looking at any URLs and links that users are accessing, checking for the DNS security and ensuring that that is authorized and in place, ensuring from a malware perspective that users are not accessing malicious and dangerous content. Also, something often unspoken about, DLP. A lot of the time, people think DLP is everything moving maybe through a USB, could be going through an email, but it could also be happening on a browser level, and resources, sensitive information could be shared through any of those channels. For example, if you copy a list of passport numbers and decide to paste it in let's say ChatGPT or Copilot, and you ask it for a nicely presented table because you would like to utilize it within a report. That is actually a DLP incident, and you need to be able to track that, monitor that, and have that insight and information. So that's also a key component of our internet access solution within the SASE space. From that as well, we can also do SSL inspection. We spoke about the malware protection and the fundamentals of cybersecurity, so threat prevention on an internet access level, as well as mobile security and browser security. So wherever those resources are located and however you are accessing them through whichever device in this instance, internet access is able to enforce those policies. Now let's get into a little bit about the power of hybrid SASE. So we spoke about cloud SASE, where SASE started, how we've moved and changed it into hybrid SASE, and where we are at the moment. So from a hybrid SASE perspective, we see key things when it comes to the user experience as well as privacy. So looking at the user experience, because you have on-device an on-device agent that can offer on-device network protection in this instance, the user experience is actually enhanced without having to have all the internet traffic inspected through the cloud, but the agent being able to take care of that inspection, which you'll see over here. So if you've got your remote users connecting through to the internet, the agent located on the device will actually do the protection and do all of those scans that we spoke about. Not everything will be routed through to the cloud first and then go back and forth to let you know that it's safe. So it's a very linear path, which means you actually have less latency. I'll also give you an example in a bit. But with that, you also then start getting advanced protection offerings. So we spoke about some of those configurations. So the web filtering, the DNS security, malware protection, and securing that Wi-Fi traffic really complements and plugs in with the idea of a hybrid SASE solution as opposed to a cloud-based only. So the example I wanted to give you around the end user experience and the reduction of latency. Let's say today you're feeling like a good slice of pizza. If you start typing in pizza places next to me, or near me rather, let's say you're based in Harare. If you are looking for a pizza place that is near you, you're hoping to find something within the Harare region at least. Typically, if your traffic is being routed through to the cloud first, the response that you get is based on where that cloud data center is located. So if you're routing all the traffic through to the cloud, the accuracy and the response that you will get will not be relevant to the end user. The moment you start having a hybrid solution in this instance, if you start looking for a pizza place next to you or near you once again, it's accurate because of the agent's location. So the agent itself has the ability to understand or at least locate the region in which you are in and then actually give you localized relevant data. So you will actually get a pizza place close to you as opposed to a pizza place located, let's say, in Italy or once again in France or Germany, wherever that data center may actually be located. That is part of the penalty of having a cloud-only network protection. Now, I want to take a bit of a step back and just zone in on what the architecture looks like. So I'm going to start from left and then work my way over to the right-hand side. So let's start with the seam and the sock side of things, right? So this plugs into everything, but I think let's rather look at the center of it all. You have Harmony SASE. So you have your SASE, your internet access, your private access, and your SaaS security, all at the heart of the solution. From there, you start looking at the integration. So let's take SaaS security in this instance. Which SaaS applications do you have? So the SaaS security will actually be able to map out your applications, understand, the authorizations and the relevant permissions that those applications have. From an internet access and a private access side of things, you start looking at the client. Is it a mobile client, a desktop client? Is it agentless access going through RDP or one of the SSH protocols as well? Then where the resources are actually located. You find, so you'll see over here, let's say you've got a private cloud or a public cloud, and you've got a data center over here. From any of these configurations, so specifically looking at private access, you'd look at setting up a tunnel that connects the user, which would be on one of these ends, all the way through to the resources on this side. If you have your branch offices that have SD-WAN in this instance, you can then integrate with any of the existing cybersecurity, so your firewalls that you have in place. And that tunnel is set up either on the protocol of being IPsec. We also have WireGuard and OpenVPN available. So from there, all of this intel can feed into your administrators, and your administrators have insight and control of all of these resources, which can then plug into a SIEM or a SOC. So if you have a third-party SIEM or SOC that you're utilizing in this instance, you can actually correlate all of those logs. So we have what we call infinity events. And the idea behind that is that you have tangible and valuable insights. Doesn't help that you have a whole lot of logs that look like they're written in Morse code, but you don't know what to do with them. So the infinity events in this instance is a good stepping stone into your SIEM and SOC journey so that you can correlate all of that information across your solutions and across your checkpoint offerings in this instance. So from there, once again, we're getting into the identity providers, and whether you're using Okta, SAML, Entra ID, any of those providers, we integrate into them so that you have all of your existing configurations that you can leverage to plug into any of these configurations that you see over here. So this is typically how you find a SASE environment is architected. Obviously, once again, no two environments are the same. So we like to take a step back, and when we have our personalized sessions, we map it out specifically according to how your environment is designed. So just one more thing before we get into some questions. So we spoke about private access, internet access. The last component of SASE, well, at the moment, is SaaS security. So SaaS and SASE, not to be confused with each other. SASE is all about the connectivity and ensuring that the access is secure. Your SaaS applications are, for example, your Word, Excel, any of your 365 applications. Those are SaaS offerings in this instance. If you start thinking about security measures for your SaaS security, do you have any measures in place for SaaS security in this instance? Do you even know which SaaS applications are within your environment? You find users may use applications and platforms, for example, such as Canva, simple example, Adobe as well. Those are all SaaS-based applications. If you download them and you actually authorize the relevant permissions, they have access to additional applications. And that mapping and how that web is actually configured is often something that goes under the radar. So the SaaS security component is focused at giving you visibility into your environment and understanding which SaaS applications you currently have and how exactly they are configured when it comes to the permissions that they have. So you'll see over here, you'll kind of have a bit of a web similar to this in this instance with how everything is going together. Your GitHub is plugged into your Visual Studio environment, or your repositories are then being shared across other types of, let's say, coding platforms. So those types of permissions need to be understood so that if there is anything unauthorized, you can actually block that off immediately. Or if you have maybe a shadow SaaS application, you can actually disable it, configure the relevant policies, and ensure that, let's say, from the SASE side of things, you do not have access to this application unless you meet the relevant requirements. So that's the idea behind SaaS security and making sure that you can actually enforce your policies and your protection within the SaaS application space. I'm gonna put a pause here just to see if we do have any questions. Let me have a look. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat as yet. Any questions so far? Anyone wants to raise their hand, maybe ask a question or put it in the chat?
Hi, Cordelia.
Hi, TT.
Yeah, just one or two questions that we usually get when we're engaging with customers.
Yes.
The first one is on the SASE agent. Obviously, when looking, especially on internet, on the internet access
Yes.
module, is that location aware? By that I mean, if a user comes on-prem and they are connecting via a checkpoint gateway, the policies on the checkpoint gateway are the ones that are actually applied instead the ones on the agent, and so forth. But when they obviously go, when they are remote working, then the policies on the agent actually apply. Is that how it actually works?
So keeping in mind, right, so the idea is to have what we call defense in depth, right? So your firewall is protecting you, like you said. Now, if you're at the office, the moment you're on the corporate network, the firewall ensures that that traffic is secure. The moment you break away from that, you still need to maintain that same security. So what you then do is your SASE policies, whichever configurations you do on the SASE side of things, should almost be a mirror to what you do within your on-prem environment. So by having the SASE policies configured, then you will have that protection as soon as you break away from the corporate network. So short and sweet answer to it is yes. Once you've moved away from your corporate network and your VPN at the office, your SASE policies will protect you. As long as you've connected on the agent, you will have the relevant connections and protections.
Okay. What if you've got checkpoint gateways?
Okay.
How does that still apply? Does it apply automatically that the agent will detect that I'm now connecting via a checkpoint gateway and then enforce the policies on the gateway instead of the ones on the agent or something like that?
Okay, so not exactly. So the integrations that will come from the firewall in this instance are specifically around the tunnels that we configure.
Yes.
So we kind of do like a site-to-site VPN, right? So the configurations where it will pick up whether it's a checkpoint firewall or not is more on the administrator side with the configurations. So you would have configured it for a checkpoint firewall, or you would have configured a separate tunnel for a separate firewall. But it's not going to automatically start switching between this as a checkpoint firewall, this is a non-checkpoint firewall. The integration is available for a third-party firewall in this instance, but it's not for switching between the two or changing any of the policies within that based on the type of firewall. So whether the firewall that you've connected within the site-to-site VPN is Checkpoint or not, you'll still have the same level of policy configurations and the same options available.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Then the next question is on the licensing.
Yes.
What licensing options are actually there? Can one just get one of the modules, private access or internet access, or maybe they can also get both? And do you obviously have packages?
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. That's a great question. So internet access and private access can be purchased individually. So if the use case is for private access, you can purchase private access as a standalone. You only want internet access, you can purchase internet access as a standalone. The baseline of having the full SASE solution in this instance is to have both of them, but you can break them up. From there, the packages then go into different tiers. So within internet access and private access, you'll find something similar to a basic, advanced, and a complete package. So they'll have different availabilities in terms of configurations. So let's say, for example, if you have a internet access license, there's two flavors that you can get it in. Let's say you start looking at the on-device version. So the on-device version will not route any traffic through to the cloud. There's the hybrid version that will haul some of the traffic through to the cloud, depending on how you configure it. Now, if everything's being taken care of by the agent itself, you'll find there's three versions to it. If you start looking at wanting to do, let's say, the browser security, that would be found within the higher end of the package. There'll still be the same fundamentals across the board, but the moment you start looking for extensive features, that's typically found within the cream of the crop packages. So you'll also find that in private access. Once you start looking at private access, one thing I should add is that you have a cloud gateway that is included per 100 users within the license structure. So if you had 200 users, you purchase 200 licenses, you will have two cloud gateways that you can configure included in that. If you have anything less than 100, then the cloud gateway is an additional SKU that we add on. It's not natively included. What we can actually do, I can put this in a nice matrix almost so that you can see how the solution is broken down from a feature set perspective. TT, I can share that with you, and then you can share that with the audience as well. I'm also happy to share the slides. If there are any requirements or additional questions that come from this, we can arrange a session with the Procom team to get into a bit of a dive down into it. We can have a POC as well, so we can do a demo into the platform. And if you'd like to test out the licenses or any of the features, we can also get a demo or a trial environment set up for you.
Okay, thank you so much, Cordelia.
Alrighty. I don't think there's anything else from my side. TT, anything from your side in closing?
Okay, no, thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Checkpoint team for the insightful presentation on how Checkpoint SASE can secure your users everywhere, whether you are in the office or you are working remotely. Thank you all for joining us today. This presentation will actually be shared with you after the session. We appreciate your time and looking forward for continuing the conversation. Please feel free to reach your account managers if you actually need anything or would actually like to engage further on this topic. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Good.
Ciao.